Today I want to talk about the most versatile lens that I have used. So over the years I've contemplated and dabbled with different lenses to see what fits my shooting style. Way back in 2014, I was another wedding videographer using one of the most versatile lenses on my GH5, that being the Sigma 18-35 1.8. Beast of a lens. With the speed booster, you would essentially get a 24 to 50 focal range, which was unheard of at the time. These days, Sigma, Sony, and Canon have made lenses like the 28 to 70 2.0 that mirror this same versatility. So Sigma recently released a 28 to 45 1.8, which is essentially like the 18 to 35 1.8, but in full frame. Why am I talking about all these zoom primes? Well, simply put, they are super diverse and powerful, but for me and many others, my main issue is going to come down to price and weight. Transitioning, here's my favorite prime lens to shoot with and has been a focal length that I used when I shot with Sony and now Lumix, 35mm. Now I want to start by saying this lens takes amazing images and is very sharp. The autofocus is great. I'm not going to go super technical and talk about chromatic aberration and whether it's clean in the corners. I'll let you see some real life footage from weddings I've done and decide how you feel about it. It's a very small lens. It pretty much fits in the palm of my hand. There isn't much to it, like it has the autofocus, manual focus switch, that's pretty much it. But I absolutely love the zoom ring on this thing. It feels nice, like there's some give to it. And these lenses are not that expensive. Like honestly, compared to what you would get with other brands, these lenses are actually priced very well. But ultimately, I absolutely love the image that I get out of this lens. It's very small, very compact. So let's talk about the other Lumix lenses. So 35 versus 50 versus 85, and we'll just compare all these lenses. 35mm is a great focal length for a bit of everything. You can get close-ups with it, medium shots, and even landscape type shots on a wedding day. Okay, so best case scenario would be to own all these lenses and use them between your two cameras, but if you could only pick one and you only have one body, then I feel the 35mm will go further on a wedding day, giving you various looks and opportunities to capture something special. A 50mm is great, but say you want to film something in 4K 60, then your image will be cropped, so having something wider is ideal in my eyes. So starting at 35, cropping in a bit, it's almost like you're at 50 just under that. I like that versatility of having, like, if I do crop in, it's not going to be too tight type situation. So here's the 50 and the 35. As you can see, they're pretty much like the same size. I swear they're about the same weight too, because they feel very similar. And then here's my 85. So my 85 is, again, nice, small, compact, and they're all that small. I just have a different cover on here, but they're same size. On a wedding day, I've started to ditch my zoom lens and only use it for those parts of the day where you can't get a second shot or a second chance at a shot. During the bride prep, I've been using this lens to get details, shots of the bride, getting her close-up makeup shots done, or just getting shots of her hanging out with her bridesmaids. Regardless of the situation though, this lens is truly diverse. If you want those wider shots, you do have to take a step back, opposed to having like one of those zoom primes I was mentioning earlier. But I think if you're intentional with shooting, this won't matter. Also, shooting with primes will naturally make you a better filmmaker. It forces you to get good at composition and be more intentional with your framing. If I'm not shooting the ceremony, I'm usually using this lens or my 85mm, and they are awesome. I use this in conjunction with my 24-105 zoom lens. My 24-105 I'm using for the ceremony. I'll kind of use it at the reception for certain things, but I also have a 70-300 that I use as well for like speeches and stuff like that. So the second reason I'd recommend this over the prime zooms that I mentioned is the weight and how compact it is. The Lumix 35mm weighs 295 grams, whereas the other lenses I mentioned weigh around 900 grams or more. As you know, as videographers, we have a lot of things, so keeping things light is essential for feeling comfortable and being able to react quickly for shot opportunities. Rule of thumb, on a wedding day, you should always have at least 2 cameras in your bag in case you're filming a ceremony and you fall and completely smash your camera just as the ceremony is about to begin. True story. With that being said, I think it's a better idea to have a dedicated zoom that goes further and is more versatile, like a 24-70 2.8 or a 24-105, in addition to a 35mm or 50mm 1.8. That way you have two cameras meant for two different purposes, and that reassurance that you have backup, God forbid something happens to one of your cameras. I've heard horror stories, I've seen things. On a wedding day, you can't run out and get a new camera if something goes wrong. How much money are you gonna lose for not having a second camera body there? Having that one prime zoom is nice, but I think for how I shoot, I'd rather have two cameras with two different lenses that do completely different things. So this is kind of a way that I've made it where if I do run into a situation where one of my cameras fails me, both lenses are very useful and very versatile. So with that story being said, yes, I did smash. I was at a wedding, I smashed a 24-105, and I had to shoot the rest of the day on a 16-35 and an 85mm lens. That 16-35 saved me. The 35 for me spoke volumes that day. I was able to do so much on that 35 focal length. It was only an f4, but honestly, just having that 35 focal length just gave me so much diverse capability to kind of get the shots I needed to get the job done and not have to like refund them thousands of dollars. You need a 35. So my third reason is the cost of the lens. So the Lumix 35mm 1.8 is a very cost-effective lens for what you get. If you want something with a faster aperture, you'd have to go for the Sigma Art line, and those lenses are a bit more expensive. A few years ago, I bought the Sony 50mm G Master 1.2, and for anybody that used that lens, anybody will tell you how amazing the bokeh is on that lens and how beautifully it renders colors. There's just one problem for me with that lens. Aside from it being really heavy, the more concerning part is the price. No G Master lens is cheap, and this one, sitting at a price point of $2,000 US, I was terrified to even leave the house with it. I used it a few times and just ended up selling it because I was just too scared to actually use it. And I was shooting with two FX3s at the time, but that lens just freaked me out. Just the weight of it, I'd be walking and it'd be hanging off my waist and I could feel it like pulling on my shoulder, and it was just a really heavy lens. I already have a zoom lens that's heavy. I don't need my prime lens to weigh as much as my zoom. So maybe if you're built like Justin Porter, then maybe that won't matter, but for me, I'm just not built like that. So the difference between 1.4 and 1.8 is not massive and not something people are going to notice, so why spend more money? All my glass for my Sony camera, for my FX3s, were Sigma. I got those for its colors, its sharpness, and the zoom rings having less of that super loose fly-by-wire feel. And I just like that the focus rings on them were a bit more thicker than the Sony ones. So that's ultimately why I used all Sigma glass. So ultimately, when I was switching back to Lumix, I was questioning if I should go the Sigma route again. At the end of the day, I just love the fact that the Lumix lenses, I just feel like the quality you get in their 1.8 lenses are comparable to the Sigma 1.4 lenses at like a fraction of the cost. Quality, the feel, and weight of these lenses, plus the cost, make them an easy choice for me, and I have no regrets about investing in this lineup over the Sigma one. Next thing I want to talk about is filter size. So when comparing the Sigma 35mm 1.4 and the Lumix 35mm 1.8, both actually have a 67mm filter thread, but for me, it's the bigger picture with the rest of the lens lineup. All the other lenses in the Lumix lineup all have the 67mm filter thread. ND and ProMist filters are not cheap. So if you're somebody that likes to add these components, then I would lean more towards Lumix. All the Lumix lenses have the same filter thread, making it an ideal situation to be in if you want to swap your ND filter from your 35 to your 85. And just also the weight of the Lumix primes are also very similar. So if you're switching lenses on a gimbal, so I like to switch from my 35 if I'm trying to get close-ups and then switch to my 24 for wider shots of a room. Just not having to rebalance, I gotta save all the time I could get on a wedding day, and not having to rebalance the gimbal, that's a big win. But these primes are awesome, man, especially in dark situations, because these Lumix cameras, you know, they don't have that sensor like Sony where it's like 12 megapixels. If you ask me the low light capability, I wouldn't base too much you buying these lenses off of low light capability. From 1.4 to 1.8, it's not a massive difference. Also at 1.4, it's gonna be a lot harder to hold focus. And I mean, Lumix cameras have good autofocus now, but you know, it's not like Sony. You're not getting like Sony autofocus here. So like 1.8 to me is the happy medium on Lumix. These cameras are still amazing in low light. I've tested it at like 20,000 ISO, where I was very surprised by how clean the shadows were, and I didn't even add like a noise reduction software on it or nothing. So in conclusion, this lens is insanely versatile, and I recommend it to anybody that's looking for their first prime lens on the Lumix full frame system. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you want to subscribe, cool, I appreciate it. If you don't, just keep watching and leave a comment below, boost my algorithm, make me feel nice, and let me know you enjoyed this video. And if you didn't, I'd like to hear that too. This is Damien. Take care, guys. Bye.